Welcome to the Randy Gravitt Leadership Podcast, where we help you lead the hardest person you will ever lead, yourself. Here's your host, someone who believes leadership begins at home, Randy Gravitt.
What do you want? It's such a great question. I was having a meeting with my team just a few weeks ago, and one of the people said, "What do you really want? What are we really trying to do?" And as I'm thinking about our whole leadership deal we do, we work with leaders all over the world, and it's so much fun to get to invest in them. But what I really want is I want to see a world that is well led. I want every single person to have access to a great leader. Now, I want you to think about this. Have you always been well led? Chances are you've run up against a leader that didn't do what she was supposed to, or he didn't add value the way he could have. And you know, if that was the truth, it caused you to suffer. It caused all the people on the team. It just was so hard. And yet, haven't we all had great leaders? We've had men and women who have led us well. And we just know the benefit of that, how much joy that brings. What I want the people who work for you, who live with you, who are in your sphere of influence, I want them to be well led. Now, here's what I can tell you. Leadership is hard. It is such a challenge, especially now we're in this total world of disruption all of a sudden. And it's really hard to lead. It's hard to lead well. And yet, if you don't lead well, your people are really going to suffer. But if you get it right, if you lead well, if you think about how to add value to your people, if you have a vision for great results and you create great stuff and you have people with you along the way, it can just be so life-giving to everyone involved. So as I've been thinking about it and I'm talking to my team, one of the things we noticed was nobody's talking about self-leadership. Now, I really can't find anybody that's really talking about how do you lead yourself. The hardest person you will ever lead is you. I know this because I look in the mirror every night when I brush my teeth or in the morning and I see the hardest person I'm going to lead. It is me. I'm just like you. It's such a challenge to lead ourselves well. And as I look around, nobody's really teaching me how to do that. So one of the things we talked about with our team is, what if we came up with a way to try to help people really invest in themselves? When the tank gets low, we just become the fuel source for them to really recharge. And we hope you'll let us join you on this journey of leadership as we do this. Here's what we're going to do. That's our format. We're going to spend some time every week just kind of having a heart-to-heart chat like we will today. And then a couple times a week, we're gonna bring in somebody from our team, one of our coaches. We're gonna have a conversation together about leading in the marketplace or in the sports arena, the nonprofit world, wherever you lead. And then on Fridays, we're gonna try to bring in a guest, just a normal, everyday person who is actually a leader that is accomplishing some extraordinary things. We got some great people lined up that you're going to get to hear from. It's going to be a lot of fun as we have this conversation. So one of the things you can help us with is subscribe to the podcast, tell your friends about it, help us grow this. We're not really going to ask a lot from you, but that would be something you could really help us with. It'd be fantastic. I want us to think about what it is we want, what it is, or maybe you'd say it this way. How do you want to be remembered? One of the things we talk about is this idea of creating legacy. Creating legacy. Now, it's probably not a word you think about very much, legacy, because legacy is one of those retirement party words. It's one of those, 80th birthday party words. It's one of those things that you think about later. Legacy is really what you do all along the way. So if you're not careful, you'll just think legacy's out there and you'll miss the fact that you actually are creating your legacy even as we speak. And I remember a few years ago, I had an opportunity to do some work with a baseball team a college baseball team over in Alabama. And I was meeting with their coaches, and one of their coaches, the head coach actually, was very successful. He'd been in a couple of programs, and he was one of the winningest college coaches ever. And I had an opportunity to sit down with this guy, and he's been very successful, and I'm fascinated. I love going in and speaking to these teams and having a great time with that. But I always try to learn from them as well. And so I asked this guy, I said, "Hey, tell me, what's been the secret to your success?" And he doesn't bat an eye. He says, "I think it's my rule of 7. And I'm thinking, rule of 7? I've been around baseball. I played baseball growing up, but I never heard about the rule of 7. What's the rule of 7? And this coach begins to explain to me that he had done some analytics. Now, this has been probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. And there are no analytics. There's no, sabermetrics, all that stuff that you hear about in baseball. But he had done research, and he had discovered that over the previous 10-year period, that when a college baseball team scores 7 runs, they have a 93% percentage of winning the game. They win 93% of the time if they score 7 runs. And I'm like, that's pretty fascinating when you think about it. He said, so at the end of the day, I'm really not trying to win the game. I'm just trying to score 7 runs if we can with our team. He had a really good understanding of building towards 7. And he even explained to me, he said, we'll be in the second or third inning of the game, and we might get a guy on first base. And rather than trying to hit a home run, he said, one of the things I'll try to do is we'll just bunt the guy over to second, or we'll try to, sacrifice, maybe steal a base. We'll try to get him in scoring position, and then we'll see if we can get a hit rather than our best guy trying to hit a home run, which is not very likely. He said that only happens maybe once out of every 25 at bats. That's not a very good percentage there. You got a 4% chance of hitting a home run. He said, if we can get that guy to second base, and he had percentages on how likely it is that he scores if we get a hit. And so he just said, if I get a couple of runs in the second inning and a couple in the fourth, and, as I get on in the game, we can get to 7, we're going to win. As you think about your leadership, I think that's a really great way to think about it. Or if you think about your legacy, like, what is it you want? What are you trying to build toward? And one of the things I can tell you is that you get to choose how you're going to live your life. Now, today's a really pretty special day for me. Actually, in a way, I'll date this, probably shouldn't, but it's October the 5th. And today would have been my dad's birthday. My dad died about 4 years ago, and my dad loved baseball. He actually probably wouldn't love it this year because, we only had 60 games because of the pandemic going on, and they decided to let everybody in the playoffs. It feels like the Major League playoffs going on right now. They started with 16 teams, and they're, whittling them away here, and we'll see who wins the World Series in a few weeks. But I remember my dad, he loved baseball. He was a really good baseball player. Actually, he had a contract with the Cardinals. He turns it down, believe it or not, and marries my mom. He starts playing professional fast pitch softball. He's just a pretty fascinating guy, but he ends up working with Georgia Power. He was a power man is what we called him. And so my dad made sure the lights were on for everybody. He starts out as a helper in the line crew. He builds this 35-year career and ends up retiring as a regional manager here in Georgia. And he has a great legacy. But I remember one of the things he also did, not just work, he also tried to win at home. He wanted to win at work, but he also knew it was important to win at home. And I think a lot about that myself. I think if you as a leader, you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. And so we want to make sure that we understand leadership is holistic, and it all kind of fits together. Well, my dad he's coaching Little League Baseball when I'm a kid. And I remember maybe it was the summer of 75 or 76 back in the previous century. I know we have a lot of young people that we hang out with, probably a lot of young people listening, and you weren't around then, but something crazy happened in my hometown. They had invented these. If you're on the YouTube channel, you'll see they had invented these aluminum baseball bats at the time. They'd come out with these, and my dad and I were, I got my first one for Christmas, and man, I was fired up. It was going to be my second year of Little League. I was going to be the oldest guy on the team, and I was about to become a home run hitter. I was pretty fired up. I thought this is just going to change my life. This is incredible. And that was the summer that my dad taught me how to bunt. So Dad explains to me that, when somebody gets on base and there's nobody out and you come to the plate, we're gonna have you square around, and we're gonna have you bunt the ball just out in front of the plate, and more than likely you're gonna make an out, but your buddy, your teammate, is gonna advance to second base, and then we'll let one of these other guys come in, and they're gonna drive in the runs. And this is not going to be your slugger summer. This is going to be your summer where you learn to bunt. Well, my dad was actually a pretty wise man. We won the championship that year, if I recall, and yet it was not about a trophy when I look back on it. My dad's legacy, as I look back, there's things that he taught me that I'm still carrying with me. And as you think about your people, you will be remembered for the way you led. My dad was trying to teach me that the leader is the one who's willing to sacrifice the most. And he was preparing me for later. He was preparing me for adulthood. And as a leader, you're the adult in the room for your team. You should be the most mature person on the team. You should be the person who's adding the most value on the team, and not just at work. It works at home as well. The parent, right, is the one who sacrifices the most. And my dad he knew someday I'd be paying tuition, and my wife and I have 4 daughters, or had 4 daughters. We still do have them. They're grown and gone, and thankfully off the payroll now. That's kind of cool, but they weren't for a long time. We were paying tuition, and we were going to games, and we were sacrificing time. And in the same way, you're doing this. You're doing the same thing for your family, and you're expected to do the same thing for your team. And you're providing all these resources and a great environment, and you're giving people jobs, and there's all kind of things going on. But as an executive, as a coach, as a leader, as even a family member, a husband or wife, you have this opportunity to live last. You have this opportunity to add value to your people. And I want to challenge you to be willing to sacrifice the most. One of the things that you're going to find as you begin to sacrifice and you begin to lead, it is going to be very important for you to take care of yourself. And that's really what we want to do here. We want to resource you. We want to help you take care of you. Nobody's having a conversation about you right now. I want you to know it is okay for you to lead yourself first. If you will lead yourself well, you will lead your people well. So as you begin to think about creating legacy, and I want you to think about it now, it is this journey to high performance. It's not just, it's almost like the game Mother May I when you're a kid. It's not some giant step you get to take here. These are baby steps that you're going to take. And as you begin to do that, you begin to live last, you begin to lay down your rights and your resources and your time, your investment for the people on your team. You move them up, help develop them. All of a sudden, you become a leader who others want to follow. So we're going to have this conversation. It's going to be great. We're going to spend some time with you every week together, just in a heart-to-heart like this. We're also going to spend some time with one of our coaches we'll bring in. It's going to be great for your business. You'll get to experience some of the things that we do with the clients we work with. And then you're going to meet some really cool people along the way. And you're going to find out that if they can do it, if some of those people can do it, you can too. My dad was a guy who grew up really poor in the country, not educated, and yet he ended up being this really wise leader who understood when we lay down our rights and we're willing to sacrifice the most, it actually makes us the leader in the room. So here's a couple things you can do this week. I want to challenge you each week to do something, and here's our little call to action. Number one, I want to challenge you this week to make one sacrifice, to pick up your proverbial bat, to bunt one time so somebody else can move from first base to second. Somebody else can make a little bit of progress this week because of you. So invest some time. Maybe it's a gift of appreciation you need to sacrifice to give somebody something. Maybe it's just a word of encouragement. I don't know. Maybe it's a text or a call. Pick up the phone call and say, you know what? I'm actually going to take 15 minutes of my time and call someone and listen to them. How are you doing? What's going on? How can I help? And I'm convinced that if you will begin to invest in your people, you'll just make one sacrifice a week. You practice, just like we did on that baseball field. You practice. And then all of a sudden you begin to add real value to your people. And when you add value, you become a lot more valuable. Second thing you could do, we're gonna sacrifice a lot for you, but I'm gonna ask you to sacrifice something for us this week. If you would, I'd encourage you to share our podcast with your friends. You know some leaders who need to be filled up as well. We're gonna try to add value to them. We're gonna try to help them lead themselves first. Maybe the people on your team, you wanna have this conversation together, and we hope we can be an encouragement to them. So if you know someone, please share the podcast with them. And then also if you'd subscribe, that'd be great. It'd help us get our numbers up and get rolling here. We're going to try to add value at another level as we go. And so you can help us at the very beginning here to just share this with your friends and family members, anybody you know. That'd be great. You got social media, push that out. That would really help us out. We would love that. And then finally, I would just say, I just reiterate one more time, live last this week. Live last. I believe if you will live last, you will become a leader that others want to follow. and you might even create a legacy.